Miami's offseason remains on hold as they try to make a move to acquire Kevin Durant or Donovan Mitchell. But is there a stumbling block to getting Durant that they might not be able to overcome? And how does the Rudy Gobert trade impact a trade for Utah's Mitchell? We break down the latest news on today's edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Heat, a post-4th of July edition, I should say, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, on your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Not much going on currently around the NBA as teams basically, including Miami, of course, are in a holding pattern to try to see if they could pry either Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell, or perhaps another superstar. We'll talk about how the Rudy Gobert trade to the Minnesota Timberwolves impacts Donovan Mitchell's future in Utah, and we can look at some other potential superstars that might be on the trade market at some point soon. But we'll start off today's show by talking about the latest reports from Sam Amick over at The Athletic. And a piece that came out a couple of days ago, he mentioned that Phoenix looks like they're in the prime position to land Kevin Durant. And as far as Miami's chances are concerned, he had this to say. As for the Miami possibility that also seems to be in play, I'm told there's a significant obstacle on that front. Durant, it seems, would only want to play on a Heat team that includes Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Kyle Lowry. So even if the Heat were willing to move Butler in a deal as a way of satisfying the Nets' understandably pricey request, doing so would leave Durant discontented from the start. So there we have it. Some concerns about whether or not Miami might be able to pry Kevin Durant free from Brooklyn. We talked about this in our most recent episode last week because, of course, the price tag for a player like KD would be astronomical. We saw Rudy Gobert get shipped to the Minnesota Timberwolves for an incredible haul that included, I think, a total of 6 first-round picks in total, pick swaps for future first-round picks, etc., including Walker Kessler, who was drafted by the Timberwolves and shipped over to Utah. So it looks like for a player of Kevin Durant's stature, it would take more than what Miami is able to offer. What do you make of Sam's report?
It makes sense. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that were out there after Kevin Durant listed the Heat as one of his potential landing spots saying, why not just trade Jimmy Butler straight up for Kevin Durant? And my reply to that always was, I don't think Kevin Durant imagined playing for the Heat without Jimmy Butler. And this report basically indicates that. And it shouldn't be surprising at all, right? Kevin Durant is looking to join a team that can remain a contender. And a Heat team, even with Kevin Durant and let's call it Bam Adebayo and even Kyle Lowry without Jimmy Butler, it's a good team. But I don't know that team is favorites to win the finals. I don't know that team is better than Milwaukee. I don't know that team is better than Boston, you know? And so, yeah, it makes sense that obviously if Kevin Durant is going to leave Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn, that he's going to try to join a team that has a really good shot at winning the whole thing. And that's why you put Phoenix on his list and why you put Miami on his list. Now, that's Kevin Durant's preference. The other part of this is what does Brooklyn want in return? Maybe they want Jimmy Butler. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I've got no reporting on it. I've got no insight. I don't understand why they would want Jimmy Butler, considering that his age and that they probably want somebody more in line with Ben Simmons' timeline. But the Bam Adebayo guy makes more. Yeah, Bam. That's true too. Bam makes more sense, but we know that Bam and Ben Simmons, Bam can't be traded to Brooklyn while Ben Simmons is on that roster because of the designated rookie extension thing that has been covered ad nauseum at this point. Kyle Lowry, okay, maybe you throw him in a trade, but is that getting it done for Kevin Durant? I don't think so. And so you end up getting back to where you and I have talked about sort of what Miami's final offer would be is going to be Tyler Herro and like every draft pick, every pick swap, and then all of the Omer Yurtseven, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus types that Brooklyn might be interested in. That's sort of the final offer for Miami. And I wonder if that's going to be enough to get it done. And we could talk about that, you know, with if you just sort of put that offer in a vacuum against what Brooklyn would want in return for Kevin Durant? The obvious answer is absolutely not. Of course, that's not going to be enough. You have to get a third team involved, and maybe that team takes Bam Adebayo or Ben Simmons or something like that. But then you kind of broaden your scope and you say, all right, what are the best offers from the rest of the NBA?
Right.
And I just don't know that there's going to be a whole lot better for Kevin Durant, which is why I'm starting to get skeptical. And I wonder where you're at on this. Is Kevin Durant even going to get traded between now and the regular season? Because if the Brooklyn Nets don't get the offer that they really want, they don't have to do anything anytime soon. Yeah. Durant is under contract for 4 more years. I just wonder how far they'd be willing to push it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we keep hearing more and more scuttle about LeBron James wanting Kyrie Irving in Los Angeles with the Lakers. And that being said, if they trade Kyrie, maybe KD's stance on the Nets front office shifts a little bit. But I think there's just that bridge is probably burned at this point. There's a sense of distrust that organization mishandled the acquisition of James Harden, that they just can't come up with the right team, that they've blown this opportunity, whether it falls on the players, whether it falls on the front office. Nobody can say for certain. They probably both share a lot of the blame equally, but I don't know that KD wants to play in Brooklyn. So my feeling is that Brooklyn's going to move Kevin Durant. They're going to have to find a way to accommodate him.
What if you fire the front office? What if you fire Sean? If you're the owner and it's between Sean Marks and Kevin Durant?
That just leads to too much more instability. Like, I mean, he already had his he probably had his coach in Steve Nash installed. They brought in DeAndre Jordan. Mm-hmm. They've made all the player-friendly moves that Kyrie and KD wanted. That's not nearly enough to keep them happy at this point. So why bother just firing a front office that, for the most part, has done a pretty good job of trying to handle things? Now, they've misjudged some things. They've certainly given them a lot of leeway. They've given those players a lot of leeway, and it's bitten them in the ass. But at the same time, I just think that KD wants to move on. Like that seems to be.
To your point, you're absolutely right. You've got the front office that literally did everything that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving wanted them to do. So
it's not enough.
Why would you keep Kevin Durant and then fire that front office? It doesn't make any sense. Right. I'm with you. It was worth asking because that's been something that's been out there a little bit.
Having said that, I think look the odds, the current betting odds right now are that the Phoenix Suns look like a shoo-in to land Kevin Durant. And to our overall point here, whether or not Phoenix has the right package or a package that can beat the other 28 teams around the league, aside from Miami's and whatever Brooklyn is looking to get. Mm-hmm. I mean, you hear the Toronto Raptors gaining momentum because they could potentially include Scotty Barnes and a treasure trove of draft picks, Gary Trent Jr. That seems to be more aligned with what Brooklyn might want. And KD hasn't built a kind of goodwill with Brooklyn where he could say, no, guys, I really want to trade me. Please trade me to Miami. This isn't Kyle Lowry in Toronto where they were willing to bend over backwards to accommodate the heart and soul of that Raptors team who had helped them win a championship a couple of years later. And
they don't owe anything to Kevin Durant. I'm sorry. Absolutely they don't owe anything to Kyrie. They don't owe anything to KD. They came in, they commandeered the organization. It did not work out, and now they're here where they are now, which is Kyrie wanting out and KD wanting out. You mentioned the odds. We should list them because I think the actual odds themselves are really interesting. This is according to BetOnline, of course, our partner, BetOnline. The Suns are minus 125 favorites to land Kevin Durant. That's basically a surprise if he goes anywhere else, especially when you consider that Miami has the second best odds at plus 275. That's a drastic difference. And then from there, you still have a major drop-off. Toronto at plus 900, New Orleans at plus 1,200, and then Golden State at plus 1,200. That Golden State odds, that reflects that Mark Spears. Well, that's that Mark Spears report that came out over the weekend that the Warriors are interested. I don't buy that at all, and that's nothing against Mark Spears' reporting. I'm sure they've kicked around the idea because what organization is not kicking around that idea? But just like the Heat have the limitation by trading Bam Adebayo, because he's on that rookie designated extension. They can't land him with to Brooklyn because they have Ben Simmons. The Warriors have the same problem in Andrew Wiggins. Nobody wants to talk about that. Bam Adebayo and Ben Simmons are not the only two players in the league with these rookie scale extensions. Yeah. The Warriors can't move Andrew Wiggins in that deal. And if you can't move Andrew Wiggins, then what's the trade from a salary? Like, you're not moving Draymond Green for Kevin Durant. Like, you might want to, but like, good luck selling that to Joe Lacob and the fan base. Like, that's just not going to happen. And so I don't buy the Warriors at all. And so to me, Toronto makes sense. New Orleans makes sense, but New Orleans just signed Zion Williamson to this extension. So he's really, it's not impossible, but it's like really, really difficult to make that trade work. So then, okay, you're left with Brandon Ingram. All right, good player, all-star, Brandon Ingram. Nothing against Brandon Ingram, but not Zion Williamson in terms of a return. With Toronto too, I have a really hard time thinking that organization would trade Scotty Barnes. He is so young and he has such a bright future. Just won Rookie of the Year. Are they really going to move him for Kevin Durant at 34 years old? I love Kevin Durant, man. I have no but to move a guy as young and as hopeful as Scotty Barnes to basically take what is a minimum of a 10-year window and turn that into a 2 or a 3-year window, that just doesn't. I won't. I'm not going to tell you what I would do because it doesn't matter. But that doesn't seem like what Toronto would do, right? That just doesn't seem to be in line with what they do organizationally. And so now you're sort of all right. Pascal Siakam, OJ Anunoby, like good
no
players,
deal,
but like when you compare that to the Tyler Herro package, now the Heat are kind of in that zone, right? Aren't they? Where it's like,
I don't know
okay, you're not
about
going to
that.
give us Bam. That would be our first one. But then if your second offer is Tyler Herro, I don't know how much worse that is than those other offers.
Yeah, I don't, but I also don't know how much better it is. Like, I think part of it is just kind of overvaluing what Miami currently has to offer. Like Tyler, Duncan, etc., whatever it takes to pry him loose, it probably isn't enough. And I think at this point, the reality is, and maybe I'm speaking for other Heat fans here, but I just think the Kevin Durant thing seems less and less likely with every growing day. Like, if they haven't taken what Miami's offer is, Miami can't sweeten the deal either. They're not, I don't think they're going to move Bam Adebayo. I would be extremely shocked to think that they were going to move Adebayo in order to kind of grease the wheels of this deal. Either to trade him to a third team or to force Brooklyn to trade Ben Simmons. I just don't see it happening one way or the other. So, having said that,
What if you got
you never.
Ben Simmons back for Bam Adebayo?
Well, then you have to move Jimmy because there's no way those two players could work together.
You're probably right. There's
Like,
so much bad blood there. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
usually in the line of like, you could sign a TJ Warren and you can iron that out, but like the Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler stuff seems like that might be too far gone.
Now, I just thought of this even as we're talking about this, and I know we're going to bring up this name later on in the third segment, so maybe I should just save it for there. But what if you trade or ask Brooklyn to commandeer some kind of a three-way deal between Miami, the Lakers, and Brooklyn, where you send Ben Simmons, a clutch client, over to Los Angeles in exchange for LeBron James, and then LeBron goes to Brooklyn, and then KD comes to Miami? Would that
What
work?
about Anthony Davis? What about Anthony Davis instead? And then Ben Simmons and LeBron can play together finally because they work out together every summer. So I don't know. That's
There's a
crazy.
lot of
That
possibilities.
now we're getting really crazy, but who knows? It's the NBA. Whatever. I know we're going to talk about a lot more other stars later in the show. But
I personally feel like Heat fans are ready to move on. It seems less and less likely that KD is coming to Miami. We'll see how it plays out. And Vegas seems to know something that we do not. But having said that, Miami's second option looks like it's Donovan Mitchell. And the Rudy Gobert trade to the Timberwolves changes things completely. We'll talk about how they change things in the next segment. Before we do that, just a reminder that betonline.net is still your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. If you want the odds on where KD lands, where Mitchell lands, where anything regarding the NBA is happening, betonline.net is the place to go. You can find about the NHL, Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, any sport that you can think of. You'll find it all there, whether it's news, sporting wagering information, esports, podcasts, anything that you might be looking for regarding your favorite sports. You can find it over on betonline.net. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. You can download the app, BetOnline, where the game starts. Just a reminder that you can always check in with us and make Locked On Heat your first listen every day. You can always reach out to us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com. You can always reach us via Twitter. You can keep sending in those comments via YouTube. But please, please, please make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get podcasts, whether it's on YouTube or iTunes or anywhere else where you get the show. Make sure to subscribe so you can get all the great coverage that you come to expect during this difficult offseason for Heat fans, because I think we're seeing a lot of teams improving around the Eastern Conference, and there's a growing impatience that Miami has to pull off some kind of deal, which is why this name keeps coming back. I think people are kind of seeing the writing on the wall and thinking KD to Miami seems less and less likely. Now, all of a sudden, there's growing interest from the Heat fan base regarding Donovan Mitchell, especially after it looked like Utah was on the verge of blowing things up completely. Of course, we started hearing the first rumblings from Brian Windhorst over at ESPN saying it looked like they were going to be just blowing up the whole Jazz roster as it is. They trade Royce O'Neal, surprisingly enough, to the Brooklyn Nets. A couple days later, we hear about Rudy Gobert going for this incredible package of draft picks to the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's a problem for the Wolves to handle. But what's left on the Jazz roster? Well, according to some reporting, it seems like now the Jazz are focusing on retooling and rebuilding their roster with Donovan Mitchell as their player. So that's where we're kind of at right now. But I think some Jazz reporting has also indicated, well, let's not look too much into that, because I think there's still interest from Utah on trading Donovan, that they're not necessarily married to the idea of building around Donovan. Do you buy that they are looking to move on from Donovan Mitchell at this point? Because I certainly do. I think with the hiring of the draft, of the new coach, the fact that they acquire all these draft picks, is Donovan Mitchell the kind of foundational superstar that Utah wants to build around? What do you think?
I think if it was the right return, they will trade Donovan Mitchell. There's a lot of things here. And look, if you have not watched the Brian Windhorst soliloquy on basically like predicting the Rudy Gobert or a Utah Jazz trade, on First Take the day of the Rudy Gobert trade, please go ahead and watch it. Not just because of how accurate Brian Windhorst was, but because it was like just absolute television perfection. It was worth it. Happy for Windhorst, by the way, that he got that moment. He's actually a really good guy, and I'm glad that he had a chance to have that kind of moment on TV. And all the memes that have come from that have been incredible and well worth it.
So many.
But
so many.
It's all over your Twitter timeline. It's incredible. But if you go back and watch it, it's not necessarily clear that he's talking about Rudy Gobert specifically. I think when you go back and watch it, he could have been talking about Rudy Gobert or Donovan Mitchell, because as he brings up, they trade Donovan Mitchell's best friend on the Jazz, Royce O'Neal, Eric Paschall, his childhood friend that they grew up with, that he grew up with in New York, was not retained by the team. Right. There's not much reason for Donovan Mitchell to stick around. Donovan Mitchell had a great relationship with Quinn Snyder. Of course, we know that Quinn Snyder is not there. The other part of this too is that if you think about the teams that Danny Ainge has put together, and he is clearly calling the shots right now in Utah, he really, really values two-way players. Remember, he traded down from the number 1 pick and a chance to get Markelle Fultz to make sure they get more of a two-way project in Jaylen Brown in that draft. Donovan Mitchell is not a two-way guy at this point. Not what we saw last year. He was not trying on defense basically at all. He projects more of an offensive lead guard than kind of that two-way kind of guy. He's not a wing. Danny Ainge loves wings. I just wonder if Ainge is trying to, in trading Gobert, you get that haul of draft picks. I wonder if trading Donovan Mitchell, I think everybody agrees that Donovan Mitchell is a bright young star who is a great player, especially in the right situation. I just wonder if Danny Ainge looks at him and says, yeah, this is my Jason Tatum. This is my two-way wing who I could build around, because I don't think Donovan Mitchell is that level. I think the world of Donovan Mitchell. I don't think he's that superstar guy that you could build an entire team around. If you put him on Miami and you've got Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and these other guys in place, it's a different kind of conversation. He's a complementary type of star, but I don't think he's the Jason Tatum that Danny Ainge wants to build around. And so, yeah, I do buy it. I do think that Danny Ainge is ready to sell high on Donovan Mitchell right now. Absolutely. And you get a haul of draft picks back and just multiple bites at the apple. That's what I think Ainge is going to be looking for.
Having said that, okay, two things. One, I think the trade for Markelle Fultz, I think that netted them Jason Tatum in that draft, and not Jaylen Brown, if I'm not
sorry,
mistaken.
Tatum, you're right.
Yeah. But having said that, though, however, if Miami's draft package would be likely centered around Tyler Herro, is he the kind of player that Ainge is willing to sacrifice for? I mean,
no.
You're talking about two-way players. Herro certainly doesn't fit that bill, but he does provide a lot of the scoring punch that you're looking for. Again, this is a 21-year-old star with a lot of potential, if not a higher upside than Mitchell. Still more potential at this point. Still, relatively young. He's shown that he can come through in big moments. I feel like that's still, Tyler can still be viewed by some franchises as a foundational piece, especially now with his taste for the big time. Like, he's been to the NBA Finals, he's been in the Eastern Conference Finals, he's done so much in the relatively short career. He could be a building block. I could see Ainge kind of buying into the fact that Herro, if not is a foundational piece, at least he is a building block, one of the building blocks that they're going to,
or somebody that they could flip later.
Certainly a possibility. I mean, I don't even see why you.
I've thought long and hard about this.
All
I
right.
think the Heat could potentially get Donovan Mitchell without including Tyler Herro in that trade.
Oh,
And
whoa.
so
Hmm.
follow me down this path.
Okay.
DeJounte Murray just went for 4 first-round picks, right?
That's not Donovan Mitchell, though, but yes.
Is it not, though? DeJounte Murray is just an all-star.
No,
Like, how
I
much
don't see
more?
that.
I'm with you that Donovan Mitchell is a more valuable player than DeJounte Murray. My question is, how much more valuable? Right? Because we
Yeah.
just saw DeJounte Murray get traded, really
Yeah.
young, two-way potential more than even Donovan Mitchell projects to have. Like, DeJounte Murray defensively is way better than Donovan Mitchell, at least the
Yeah,
resume
no,
is.
for sure.
And so I'm like, all right, you traded him for Danilo Gallinari, which is basically just a $20 million contract. You traded him
Yeah.
for a contract and 4 first-round picks. Like, how much more is Donovan Mitchell worth? And so I would propose, if I'm the Heat, that's my starting spot is, hey, we'll give you the contracts, none of the blue chip, none of the Tyler Heroes, none of that. We'll start with Duncan Robinson, and then we'll stack contracts on top of that until we get to a Donovan Mitchell number and 4 first-round picks. And of course, Danny Ainge would come back and say, absolutely not. Donovan Mitchell is worth more than that. And if you're Miami, you say, yeah, you're probably right. But where's the final offer? I think it would be somewhere in the range of like a Rudy Gobert haul of draft picks
Oh,
and
God.
just stackable contracts. And it's probably less than, I don't know. It's probably right around the Gobert price, which is a hefty price, but it's one that Miami could pay. They could unlock picks, the 2025 pick from OKC. You do 3 first rounders, 3 pick swaps, or whatever it is, and just contracts. And I think that's actually a fair price for Donovan Mitchell. And again, these things are not negotiated in a vacuum. It's against the rest of the NBA. What's the team that's beating that offer? If Miami is just like, hey,
that's what I was getting
4
to, yeah.
first-round picks and some and Duncan Robinson and some other salary, that's our trade package. If you could go beat that, let us know. Like the Knicks just signed Jalen Brunson. They're not trading for Donovan Mitchell right now. Who's trading for Donovan Mitchell right now?
Yeah. No, that's what I keep coming back to. And I said this on our most recent show. Like, I think the plan internally, and again, this is not reporting on my take, from my side of things. I just think the KD thing seems so unlikely because it's going to take so much more beyond whatever Miami has to offer. Given that you shift to a really, really strong plan B in Donovan Mitchell, and you're basically betting against yourself. Until Danny Ainge either says, you know what, we either want to really, really keep Donovan Mitchell, which, as you pointed out, there's no real reason for them to do so, or you could just take back whatever Miami's offering, because I don't see 20-ish other teams making that strong a deal. Like Toronto's not getting in that deal. New Orleans isn't getting in that deal. They just acquired CJ McCollum. I don't see any other team going, oh, we can't wait to have Donovan Mitchell. The only reason...
Two teams.
Who?
Washington and Indiana. But good luck to Washington beating that offer.
Yeah.
And
I don't even
Indiana,
see why. 2 undersized guards between him and Bradley Beal. Like, what's the point of that? To be honest with you, I just don't even see that.
It's a very good point. And with Indiana, they might be going more towards like the French guy. They might be going more towards tanking. It kind of seems like. But I mentioned they just traded Brogdon. I'm like, all right, Halliburton and Donovan Mitchell. That seems like a good backcourt pairing. But I don't know that they want to go there. They might be more like, you know what, we want to tank and go get this 7'2" French kid that's everybody's going after. So
yeah,
I don't know what the team is that's going after Donovan Mitchell. Sacramento, like that, they just they don't want to put anybody. It appears like they don't want to put anybody in the backcourt next to De'Aaron Fox, because God forbid De'Aaron Fox ever doesn't have the basketball in his hands. So they just passed up on Jaden Ivey. So I'm like, I don't know what the better offer is. If Miami is just like Duncan Robinson, 4 first-round picks, go beat that.
Yeah.
And if you're Utah, maybe you could say that. If you're Utah, you could say, well, we'll just hold on to Donovan Mitchell. And that's all. If you just read between the lines of this reporting, that's what the Jazz are scared of, is that that's going to be the best offer. But if you look at what they've done, getting rid of his best friends, completely hitting the reset button on this thing, like it's Donovan Mitchell and a bunch of random players, man. Like that's not a playoff team. They have there's no
and
use
he
in them
can't be happy.
Donovan Mitchell. No,
he can't be happy.
And if he demands a trade, you know what happens to his trade value? It plummets. So you are better off trading him now than later. So I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is it kind of feels like Miami is weirdly in the driver's seat on the Donovan Mitchell thing.
I agree. We'll talk about the likelihood of acquiring Mitchell and whether or not he is the better option for Miami or some of the other names that might be available around the NBA. But before we do that, just a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Look, you go into a traditional chain auto store parts, auto parts store, You ask questions from the person behind the counter. Maybe you don't know exactly what you're looking for. They kind of get frustrated. You get frustrated. You feel embarrassed. Why go through all that? They're just going to find whatever parts their warehouse happens to carry on their computer. You've got access to the same computer that they do on your phone or at home, which means you've got access to a family-owned business, rockauto.com, that's been serving auto parts customers online for over 2 decades. I've used it myself, save hundreds of dollars. You save a lot of time on their easy to use, even an easy to navigate website. Just a few clicks and you get exactly what you're looking for. It's delivered directly, safely, and cheaply to your door. Again, you save time, you save money. Who doesn't want to go through that? Whether you're a do-it-yourselfer or a mechanic that's been working the job for years, rockauto.com is a place for you. Again, a family-owned business, so you can absolutely know that you're getting something trustworthy in return. Go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, and then go to the section that says, how'd you hear about us? And write the phrase locked on so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck will ever need. That is rockauto.com. Just a reminder to always make sure to subscribe to the show. We'll be coming to you from Las Vegas later this weekend as we cover the Summer League team. A lot of people, well, I don't know if a lot of people are excited about seeing rookie Nikola Jovic, perform for
They
the
should
Heat.
be. He had a step back 3 this past weekend. It's on. Let's talk about the Yover, man. I'm excited to go see him live.
The Yover is never taking off. I will do everything I possibly can with my dying breath to make sure that never takes off as a nickname. I'm sorry, man.
That's fine.
Yeah, you got to find something else there. It's just Yover. I don't even know where to go with that. Joker makes sense because, again, Joker, a word that actually exists, but Jover, I don't know. I don't see it, man. But you know what I don't see? I don't see Kevin Durant coming to the Miami Heat, as I've mentioned many times before. I think the plan is for Donovan Mitchell, but if you had to choose between one of those two players, which do you think is the better option for Miami? And I know we kind of started to debate this on last week's last show, but we're still here a couple days later with everything still on hold, looking down the barrel of a potential trade or no trade, which is absolutely even worse. I'm sure as a lot of Miami fans are really dreading that possibility. But right now, if you could potentially get a much cheaper, less explosive trade for Donovan Mitchell, or if you have to give up, mortgage your entire future and half your roster to pry KD out of Brooklyn, which is the better deal for the Miami Heat to explore?
I don't know if my answer is going to be surprising or expected. Because I have by most Heat fans, because I really don't have a pulse on what most people want, because Kevin Durant on one hand is Kevin Durant. Like, why would you not want Kevin Durant on your roster? But if it was, and I firmly believe if the Heat include Tyler Herro in a Donovan Mitchell trade, they are overpaying based on the market that we have seen for Rudy Gobert, DeJounte Murray, and all these guys that have been moved lately. It's just draft picks. All these teams just want draft picks. And so I would rather have Donovan Mitchell if it means holding on to Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. And David, I don't know that it's that close. I love Kevin Durant. You put Kevin Durant on this team, the Heat, all that talk we had about them not having that national attention and all these things, that goes away right away. Yeah. You and I make way more money and get way more attention if Kevin Durant is on the Miami Heat. But in terms of what it actually means for the organization and what you have to give up, I just don't see a way that Kevin Durant, if you have to trade Bam Adebayo to get Kevin Durant, I don't see a way that the Heat win the championship. I just don't see it. Yeah,
so, you're right. No.
I would rather have if you just put Donovan Mitchell on this team and keep the core.
Right.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Like, he is sort of like, yeah, I think, first of all, the Heat would get more out of him defensively than he got in Utah. And then offensively, he's all the things that you've been looking for offensively, he is that guy.
I agree 100%. I've said this many times before. I think Mitchell, look, we debated Mitchell when the news first started coming out after the Utah Jazz first round exit in the playoffs this year, whether or not he would be a name of interest for Miami. We've said that many times. There was a connection there. They looked at him closely in the draft. He went the one pick right before they selected Bam Adebayo, which worked out very well for the Miami Heat. But there's obvious interest there. There was talk about Mitchell filling in 2016 to fill in for that Dwayne Wade guy who left Chicago. There was a natural mentorship that could have been there. Miami knows how to deal with a player like that. There was a connection there. They just went through this with Victor Oladipo, too, another guy who sees Wade as a mentor. So it's a great fit. He's young. He's friends with Jimmy. He's friends with Bam in particular. Like,
they were just working out together, Donovan Mitchell and Bam Adebayo.
He was sitting next to Jimmy. Big deal. Next to Jimmy Butler celebrating their trainer's birthday in New York City a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, Chris Brickley.
Those things, really quickly. We used to do this segment on Locked On NBA. Big deal or little deal? Those things.
Little deal.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
I'm gonna go big deal. I just wanted to go quick on it. I think that stuff matters, man. We know that these people talk. We know that they talk.
I just think with the proliferation, is that the right word? I don't know, the rampant use of social media, et cetera. Like all these guys, like we just saw PJ Tucker having a white party in Philadelphia with new teammates and stuff like that at the former Sixers owner's house. Like he's already part of Sixers culture there. These things happen. You go to off-season parties all the
You
time.
just
You're
think that we see
celebrating with
more of it because of social media.
yes. Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
have to
That's
agree.
fine. That's fair. That's
That's my
fair.
perspective. Having said
Can
that,
I?
I think
Yeah.
there is friendship there. I think there's a
Yeah.
connection there. I really think that he would be a great fit here. And as you said, I think Miami would look at him and say, you know what? We've got our current team established with our new leader in Jimmy Butler, and at some point down the road, we're turning the keys over to you and Bam, and you can run the
Yeah.
show together. And that's the ultimate
Yeah.
selling point, not just for fans, but for the players themselves. Go ahead. What was your point?
I'm again, this is just you read the tea leaves on what it is that the Heat are doing, and it just feels like, first of all, you mentioned this before, maybe Heat fans are disappointed that the Heat have not made that big star trade right now. I think
Right.
the Heat are a little disappointed that they haven't made that, or maybe not disappointed that they haven't made the star trade yet, but they're telegraphing the fact that they want to make that star trade. You look at everything that they have done by
Yep.
not re-signing PJ Tucker, by
Yep.
basically just bringing in their own guys, Victor Oladipo
Yep.
and Dwayne Dedmon, to stackable, tradable salaries.
Right.
Everything that they are doing screams, by between now and the trade deadline, we want to make a move and put the chips in for a star, whether that is Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell, or I'll throw out Damian Lillard. The recent reporting by Sam Amick that it's a little doubtful that he's going to sign this extension. If he doesn't sign this 2-year extension, like, okay, cool, you got Jeremy Grant. If I'm Damian Lillard, is that selling me on staying in Portland? I don't know. Do I want to stay in Portland and sign this extension until I'm 37 years old? I don't know that I want to do that. And so I think that the Heat are thinking about Damian Lillard too, about between now and the deadline, one of these guys is going to become available and viable or for Miami to trade for. And so if you're the Heat, we have seen them do this as a front office. They are patient. They have remained patient. They are willing to be patient to an extent. I think their patience will wear thin by the trade deadline.
Yes.
But they have now, between now and the trade deadline, and they have prepared for that because, yeah, you re-signed Oladipo and Dedmon to tradable contracts, but you can't trade them until December, right?
Yeah.
Because of CBA rules. And so they're ready to move those contracts, not now, but they're planning on moving them between basically December 15th or whatever it is and February, whatever the trade deadline is going to be, mid-February. And so that's sort of the window that we're talking about here. If you can get something done before that, of course they will. But I think Miami, without anticipating Brooklyn just going haywire the way that they have, and maybe Utah blowing things up a little bit earlier than maybe some people anticipated, I think they were thinking between now and the trade deadline. So they've set themselves up, I should say this, they've set themselves up for two different windows. You've got the window now and the window between mid-December and mid-February. They want to make a move. And I think these are the guys that they're thinking about.
Having said all that, can they afford to be patient? Because even hearing you talk about this, I don't think they can. This isn't about the frustration from fans wanting to see the big move, et cetera. This is about the fact that you're banking on basically throwing away half of regular season and then still costing Jimmy Butler the time where he can be the best player on your team. And again, that championship window that they're looking at, they want to bring a title to Miami. They want to deliver their guarantee to Jimmy Butler to bring a title to Miami with him at the helm. And having said all that, I don't know that they're willing to sacrifice that move. But let's assume that might be the case, that you're kind of playing it by ear, being a little bit patient. Is there something that Miami could offer to sweeten the deal to get it done sooner rather than later? Because I'm not sure there is. You talk about the contracts, the stackable contracts, Dedmon, Oladipo, et cetera. I don't know what else there is that Miami could offer in a potential trade for Donovan Mitchell to get it done sooner rather than later. Yeah, that's not going to get it done. So I don't know.
I mean, it depends. It depends on what teams like Brooklyn and Utah think of a guy like Tyler Herro, because Tyler Herro is pretty polarizing. You know, we saw this with the 6 Man of the Year type of voting. Like, he's a guy people are like either, hey, yay points, or you know what, this guy actually has a really high ceiling and could be sort of a foundational scorer for our lead offense. And so it depends on what Utah and Brooklyn think of Tyler Herro. I have no idea. But like I said, Danny Ainge has not veered towards guys like Tyler Herro. He's more veered towards to a type of wings.
Right.
I would be surprised if Danny Ainge looked at Tyler Herro in that way. Same goes for Brooklyn. I would be surprised if they looked at him in that way. And so I don't know. Maybe you can move if you want to sweeten the
Well,
deal
here's
for
this.
Durant. Can you move
Yeah.
Bam to a third team?
Yeah. Well, again, I don't know that you
And-
want to move Bam just for Donovan Mitchell, but I do like
no,
that
I'm talking about for
possibility.
Durant. I'm talking about for Durant.
Oh, okay.
I would not include Bam in a Donovan Mitchell trade. Absolutely not. No.
I should hope not. But even for Mitchell, and look, we've seen this kind of creativity from this front office before. I think a third team deal, a three team deal is what's likely to happen for Miami to land Donovan Mitchell. If Herro isn't the player that the Jazz want, and it seems likely that they aren't, you could move him for the kind of treasure trove of draft picks that you could send to Utah in exchange. Like, I think you can get a couple of firsts potentially, along with everything that Miami has to offer already. You trade away Tyler Herro, you have all that package sent over to Utah, and next thing you know, you've got your pick for the future. There, you've got your player again, your building block.
Can you do it without Tyler Herro? Can you just say, hey, listen, we'll do something with the Thunder to unlock that 2025 pick, and then you can have 2023, 2025, 2027, 2029. That's 4 first-round picks. That's what DeJounte Murray got traded for.
Yeah, but again, they don't view Mitchell as the Spurs do DeJounte Murray. I think
Put pick swaps in there. Atlanta didn't get pick swaps. Throw the pick swaps in there. That is so much stuff. Like I think that would be it's the entire future that you're banking on Donovan Mitchell. And if you're Utah, now you're controlling not 1 but 2 drafts between theirs and Minnesota's.
Yeah, it all boils down to Danny Ainge holding the leverage.
Yes,
the same way that Pat Riley wouldn't make the deal with Ainge for Justice Winslow years ago. Now the shoe is on the other foot, and I know that Ainge is going to want to make Riles square. F Boston, we'll see. F you, Danny, etc.
Right.
Now we're going to see Pat Riley have to eat crow, eat whatever.
Maybe this whole conversation is ridiculous anyway. Those two might just never work together on a trade.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. I mean, a lot of these deals, and we've mentioned this many, many times before over the years, they're all built on relationships. Who do you know? Yeah. Whose agent works with your player that you're trying to get, or if you're trying to land another deal with somebody else that Mitchell's agent represents. This is the best way to go about doing it. You have to be able to grease a lot of wheels and work these things, and they don't happen immediately either. There have been multiple conversations between the two franchises over the last few months in order to get something done. Now you just kind of start throwing more against the wall to see what sticks. Maybe a deal gets done, maybe it won't. It's hard to predict right now. If I had to guess, I'm going 50-50 on landing Donovan Mitchell. I think KD is out the window. I think it's a done deal that he goes to Phoenix, but I think we see Donovan Mitchell in a Heat uniform by the start of the regular season. We'll see. It could be this. It could be right around training camp. Look, they moved Jimmy Butler from Minnesota to Philadelphia right after training camp started.
These things do tend to happen later in the offseason than people tend to remember. That's a really good point by you. I mean, we're going to Las Vegas Summer League in a week, David, and most of this stuff historically starts really happening at Summer League and then doesn't happen until afterwards. We just start hearing these kind of things while the Vegas stuff is happening. So all of this is sort of earlier than it usually happens.
Yeah.
So maybe we do. I'll just say this again, and I'm with you on the Donovan Mitchell stuff. Who is Miami competing against for Donovan Mitchell? And just go through the list of 30 teams in the NBA. Who wants Donovan Mitchell? Maybe Brooklyn can get involved for Kevin Durant, and that's a whole other thing. But that means Kevin Durant's getting rerouted somewhere, and Donovan Mitchell's maybe going to Brooklyn. But it's just none of this stuff happens in a vacuum, is all I'll say.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. We'll see how it all plays out, and as always, we'll be sure to bring you all the coverage you expect, breaking down any potential moves here on Locked On Heat. And thank you so much for making us your first listen every day. Make sure you make your second listen Locked On NBA, 30 minutes every day to get your daily news, rumors, everything that you might need about the NBA. Just all updates that you're looking for on 30 minutes or less. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
R.I.P. Hank Goldberg.